The day my husband dragged me toward the door in front of his entire family, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I simply looked at him and realized something terrifying and beautiful at the same time. He had no idea who he was married to. If you had asked anyone in Lekki who I was before that day, they would have described me with soft words. Quiet. Respectful. A good wife. Lucky woman. They would say I married well. They would say Colonel Adebayo saved me. The truth was far more complicated. My name is Amara Okafor, and this is how a perfect marriage cracked open slowly, so slowly that everyone missed it until it was too late. Colonel and I met at a charity dinner 5 years earlier. He was charming in a controlled way, the kind of man who spoke calmly and made people lean in. He came from a powerful Yoruba family, old money mixed with influence, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. I was different from the women he usually dated. I wasn't loud. I didn't compete for attention. I listened. And Colonel loved that. You are peaceful, he told me once as we sat on his balcony overlooking the city lights. With you, my mind can rest. What he didn't know was that I was raised by a father who taught me silence was never empty. My father was an accountant who became a property investor quietly. He never chased headlines. He chased documents. Power is not noise, Amara, he used to say. Power is ownership. When Colonel proposed, my parents asked me one question in private. Do you trust him? I said yes. And at that time, I meant it. Our wedding was grand. Our house was even grander. A modern masterpiece in Lekki Phase 1. Clean lines. Marble floors. Tall windows that let in Lagos sunlight like it was curated. Colonel told everyone proudly, I bought this house before marriage. I never corrected him. Why would I? I had learned early that people reveal more when they believe they are winning. The first crack wasn't dramatic. It came in the form of a phone that never left Colonel's hand. At first, I didn't think much of it. He was expanding his consulting business. Calls came late. Messages buzzed during dinner. Then the phone started sleeping under his pillow. One night, I reached across the bed to turn off the alarm on his phone. He woke up instantly. Don't touch my phone, he snapped. The silence afterward was heavy. I began. Just what? He interrupted. You think I'm hiding something? He turned his back to me. I apologized. That was my first mistake. Colonel's mother, Mrs. Adebayo, began visiting more often. She inspected everything. The food. The curtains. My tone. Amara, she said one afternoon, sipping tea slowly, a wife must know when to speak and when to be quiet. I smiled politely. Yes, Ma. Colonel watched these interactions without interference. Sometimes, he smiled. That was the second crack. The email I was not meant to see the night everything changed. Colonel forgot his laptop open. I was bringing him dinner. The screen glowed in the dark living room. An email preview caught my eye. From Legal Desk Services Subject. Revised Asset Protection Draft. My heart slowed. I didn't touch the mouse. I didn't need to. The words beneath the subject line were enough. Once the transfer is complete, she will have no legal claim. I stood there longer than I should have. When Colonel walked in, I had already memorized the sender's name. I handed him his plate. He kissed my forehead. You're quiet tonight, he said. Just tired, I replied. That night, I didn't sleep. I remembered my father's voice. Read everything. The strange distance after that, Colonel became colder. He criticized small things. The soup is too salty. Why are you always asking questions? You don't need to understand everything. One evening, he came home late, smelling unfamiliar, not perfume, but effort. I asked calmly, Did you eat? Yes, he said quickly. That answer stayed with me. The warning I ignored a week later, our housekeeper Beezy, hesitated while cleaning the living room. Madam, she said softly, forgive me, but you should be careful. Careful of what? I asked. She shook her head. I cannot say more. People like Beezy see everything, and fear keeps them quiet. One Friday evening, Connell announced casually, "My family is coming on Sunday." "All of them?" I asked. "Yes." Something in his tone felt rehearsed. "Why?" I asked. He shrugged. "Just family." That night, I made a call he didn't hear. I checked documents he had never bothered to ask about, and I prepared myself. Because deep down, I knew something was coming. Something public. Something humiliating. And Connell had no idea that every step he was taking toward pushing me out was walking him straight into his own trap. Sunday morning the house filled early. Laughter. Perfume. Judgment. I served drinks. Connell barely looked at me. His mother sat proudly, already certain of victory. Then Connell stood up. "Amara," he said loudly. My heart was calm. "This marriage is over," he announced. Gasps filled the room. "You have forgotten your place," he continued, "and you will no longer stay in this house." He walked toward me, took my arm, and dragged me toward the door. In front of everyone. "This is my house," he said. And that was the moment I smiled. Because he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. The door closed behind me with a soft click that sounded louder than a slap. For a few seconds, I stood outside the house, my house, with my small bag in my hand, the evening air brushing my skin like a witness that refused to speak. Inside, I could hear murmurs, low voices, the sound of satisfaction settling into the walls. Connell had done it. Publicly. Deliberately. With his entire family as an audience. I walked to my car slowly. Not because my legs were weak, but because I needed them to see my back, straight, unbroken. I drove away without looking back. That night, I stayed at a quiet hotel on Victoria Island. Nothing extravagant. Neutral walls. Neutral staff. A place where no one knew my name. I sat on the bed and finally let myself breathe. Not cry. Breathe. Because crying would come later, if it came at all. I took out my phone and dialed the number I had memorized years ago. It rang once. "Amara," my father said calmly. "I was wondering when you would call." "I've been thrown out," I replied. There was a pause. Then, softly, "Did he do it publicly?" "Yes." Another pause. Longer. "Good," my father said. I closed my eyes. That was when I understood something important. This wasn't the end of my marriage. It was the beginning of the truth. By morning, messages started coming in. Connell didn't call. But others did. Concerned friends. Curious relatives. Even people who had never asked how I was before. "Amara, what happened? Are you okay? Is it true Connell sent you away?" I answered no one. Instead, I opened my email. There it was. Another message from Legal Desk Services, this time forwarded accidentally to the wrong address. Mistakes happen when people are arrogant. The attachment was detailed. Too detailed. Connell's plan unfolded on the screen like a script he had practiced for months. Divorce papers already drafted. A claim that I had contributed nothing significant to the marriage. A strategy to declare the house a premarital asset under his control. And then I saw the name. Saad Balagan. My stomach tightened. Mistress. Not a rumor. Not suspicion. A person. There were expense reports. Apartment rent. Jewelry receipts. Private school fees. Yes, fees. She had a child. And Connell was paying. My chest burned, but my mind sharpened. This wasn't just betrayal. It was replacement. Connell believed I would panic. He believed I would beg his family. He believed I would crumble under shame. He had mistaken my silence for ignorance. That was his fatal error. I called my lawyer, Ao, a woman my father trusted more than anyone. She listened quietly as I explained everything. When I finished, she said one sentence that changed the entire direction of my life. "Amara, he doesn't own anything." I smiled. Let's make sure he remembers that. The house in Lekki had never been Connell's. Not before marriage. Not during marriage. Not ever. It was registered under a holding company my father created years ago, one that quietly transferred full ownership to me the week before my wedding. Connell had signed occupancy documents, not ownership. He had been living on borrowed ground, wearing borrowed confidence. And now, he wanted to evict the owner. 2 days after I left, Connell called. His voice was different, controlled, but strained. "Amara," he said, "we need to talk like adults." "I agree," I replied calmly. "You embarrassed me by leaving," he continued. I almost laughed. "You dragged me out," I corrected. Silence. "I think we can settle this quietly," he said. "You don't want problems with my family." That was when I knew he still didn't understand. I said, "Connell, enjoy the house while you can." He hung up. I didn't rush. Revenge, like power, is best served slowly. I froze all joint accounts, legally. I removed my name from liabilities he had hidden. I alerted the bank about pending ownership verification on the property. No drama. Just paperwork. Within a week, Connell started losing control. His credit card declined at a restaurant. His business partner delayed a deal. His mother called me. Her voice was suddenly sweet. "Amara, my daughter," she said, "let us talk." I declined politely. Saad contacted me on social media. Her message was long. Apologetic. Defensive. Confused. "I didn't know he was still married," she wrote. I replied with one sentence. "He dragged me out of my house." She didn't respond. If you're enjoying this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more powerful African tales. One evening, AO called me. "Amara," she said, "Connell has filed an emergency claim." "For what?" "To secure the house." I laughed softly. "Let him." That night, Connell gathered his family again. He was confident. He believed the law would protect him. He didn't know that the documents he submitted were about to expose everything. Because the house didn't belong to him. And the court would find out. Soon. The next morning, I received an alert. Court order pending. Property access restricted. Connell was locked out. Not by force. By law. I drove past the house slowly. Security stood firm. Connell's car was outside. He was arguing. Yelling. Confused. For the first time since I married him, Connell looked small. And that was when my phone rang. It was Saad. She was crying. "There's something you need to know," she said. My grip tightened. "What?" I asked. "He lied to both of us." And then she said the words that would destroy him completely. Saada's voice trembled through the phone. "He told me he owned everything," she said between shaky breaths. "The house, the company, the accounts. He said you were just temporary." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling of my quiet apartment. Temporary. That was the word he used. I felt something strange then. Not rage, not sadness, but clarity. The kind that settles when all the pieces finally fall into place. "What else did he lie about?" I asked calmly. There was a long pause. "The child," she said. "He said the boy was his nephew. I only found out the truth last month. And, Amara, he told me the divorce was already done." I closed my eyes. Connell hadn't just betrayed me. He had built his entire life on deception. "Saad," I said gently, "I won't fight you. But I won't protect him either." She exhaled sharply. "I don't want his protection anymore." That was the moment the final door opened. By the end of that week, the court injunction became permanent. Connell was officially denied access to the property pending full ownership review, which meant he had nowhere to sleep. The same house he had dragged me out of now refused to open its gates for him. Poetic justice doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just locks the door. His mother called again. This time, she didn't pretend warmth. "You think you are clever," she snapped. "You want to disgrace our family?" I replied calmly, "No. I only want what belongs to me." "You are nothing without us," she said. I smiled to myself. "Madam, I replied softly. I was something long before you knew my name. She hung up. The hearing was quiet. No cameras. No shouting. Just truth laid bare. Connell sat across the room, jaw tight, eyes restless. For the first time, he looked unsure. AO presented the documents. The holding company. The transfer date. The signatures. The judge raised his head slowly. So, he said, looking directly at Connell, you attempted to evict the legal owner of the property? Connell opened his mouth, closed it. The silence was heavy. The ruling was simple. The house belonged to me. Fully. Legally. Irrevocably. Connell's shoulders dropped. Something inside him broke. Once the truth surfaced, everything else followed. His business partner withdrew quietly. Clients asked questions. Banks reviewed accounts. Saad moved out of the apartment he paid for. She didn't take revenge. She just left. Sometimes, that hurts more. Connell tried to call me. I didn't answer. Not because I hated him, but because I no longer needed to hear his voice to know who he was. Weeks later, Connell asked to see me. One last time, he said in a message. Please. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a cafe. He looked older, smaller. Why didn't you tell me? He asked quietly. Tell you what? I replied. That you owned the house. I leaned forward. Why didn't you ask? I said. You assumed. And you built your cruelty on that assumption. He swallowed. I thought you were weak. I smiled gently. That was your biggest mistake. As I stood to leave, I paused. Oh, I said casually, there's one more thing. He looked up. The house. I continued. I'm donating part of it. His eyes widened. To whom? I met his gaze steadily. To a women's legal fund, I said. In your family's name. His face drained of color. Why? He whispered. So your name can finally stand for something useful, I replied. And then I walked away. I moved back into my house. Not as a wife, but as an owner. I filled it with peace. With silence that healed instead of hid. Connell faded into memory, not as a villain, but as a lesson. Never mistake quiet for powerless. Never confuse kindness with weakness. And never try to destroy a woman without knowing what she owns. Because sometimes, the house you think you're throwing her out of is standing firmly on her name.